"We don't serve charity cases here." The words sliced through the warm evening air of Milan's most prestigious suit boutique, each syllable dripping with calculated disdain. Marcus stood frozen, his carefully saved paycheck from his new job still clutched in his trembling hand. The boutique manager's lips curled into a practiced sneer, one perfected over years of judging worth by fabric and fashion. Around them, the gentle classical music seemed to fade as wealthy patrons turned to watch, their whispers and barely concealed smartphone cameras creating an arena of casual cruelty. The boutique gleamed like a jewelry box, all polished marble and soft golden lighting that made every suit shimmer with promise. Each mannequin wore an outfit that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent, their perfect poses seeming to mock his department store blazer and scuffed shoes. He had planned this moment for months, his first real suit for his new position at Goldman Sachs. By the window, a figure in a casual black hoodie paused his browsing, his reflection in the glass revealing a familiar profile that nobody had noticed yet. The manager's voice rose theatrically, ensuring his performance would reach every corner of the boutique. "Perhaps you misread the sign? This isn't a thrift store." Wealthy customers chuckled, their own designer labels suddenly feeling more valuable. Marcus's face burned with humiliation as his dream of belonging in this world crumbled. But in the window's reflection, the hooded figure had turned fully now, and Brad Pitt's eyes held a storm that was about to break. Marcus had rehearsed this moment 100 times in his mind during the long subway rides to his new job at Goldman Sachs. The way he would walk into Milan's most prestigious boutique, Alessandro's, with his first real paycheck. How he would finally shed the last visible traces of his childhood in Detroit's poorest neighborhood. The suit he'd chosen from the window display, a masterpiece of charcoal Italian wool that somehow looked both powerful and understated, cost exactly what he'd saved over 3 months of careful budgeting, eating nothing but ramen and working overtime. He'd even practiced the way he would say, "I'd like to try the Armani in charcoal, please," in front of his bathroom mirror, training his voice to sound like the Ivy League graduates he now worked alongside. But nothing in those practice sessions had prepared him for the raw humiliation of being dismissed before he could even finish his carefully rehearsed sentence. The manager's eyes had flicked over his worn blazer, a thrift store find he'd had tailored as best he could afford, with the kind of dismissive cruelty that didn't need words to wound. The boutique manager, Giorgio Bellucci, had perfected his craft over 15 years of guarding Alessandro's exclusive reputation. He could spot the wrong kind of customer from a mile away. The dreamers, the aspirational middle class, the ones who saved for months for a single suit. They were bad for business, he believed, diluting the boutique's aura of exclusivity. His current target was almost too easy. The poorly concealed hope in the young man's eyes, the way he kept touching the envelope in his pocket like a talisman, the clear tells of someone who didn't belong. Around them, the boutique's regular customers provided the perfect audience, their attention shifting from designer racks to the unfolding drama. A woman in Chanel whispered something to her companion, both hiding smirks behind manicured hands. 2 executives paused their browsing, smartphones discreetly rising to capture what promised to be prime social media content. The classical music playing through hidden speakers seemed to mock the silence that had fallen over the showroom floor, Vivaldi's strings accompanying a modern dance of social cruelty. Near the window, the hooded figure shifted slightly, his reflection growing more distinct in the darkening glass. "Perhaps," Giorgio continued, his voice carrying the practiced warmth of expensive cruelty, "you'd be more comfortable at one of those charming department stores downtown. They have payment plans, I believe." He gestured toward the door with manicured fingers, each movement choreographed to emphasize the Rolex gleaming on his wrist. Marcus felt his throat tighten, his new Goldman Sachs business card burning in his pocket like a lie. The card that proved he belonged here, that he'd earned his place, suddenly felt as fake as the counterfeit watches sold on street corners. The wealthy audience had grown, their designer outfits forming a wall of judgment around him. Someone laughed, a sharp cutting sound that would feature prominently in the TikTok videos already being uploaded. But something in the atmosphere shifted, a subtle change in pressure that silenced the whispers. The hooded figure by the window had turned fully now, pushing back his hood with deliberate slowness. Brad Pitt's presence hit the room like a thunderclap, his casual outfit suddenly making every designer label seem trying too hard. His expression carried the quiet intensity that had faced down Nazis in Inglorious Bastards and vampires in Interview with the Vampire. And now it was focused entirely on Giorgio. Brad Pitt moved through the boutique with the same effortless grace that had defined his decades in Hollywood, each step purposeful yet relaxed. The designer suits that had seemed so intimidating moments ago now looked like mere fabric in comparison to his presence. He was dressed in what most of the boutique's clientele would consider casual, a black hoodie, worn jeans, and boots that had clearly seen better days. Yet somehow he made everyone in their $1,000 outfits look overdressed. "You know," he said, his voice carrying that distinctive Oklahoma drawl that had charmed audiences worldwide. "I walked into a place like this once, back when I was just starting out." He stopped beside Marcus, but his eyes were fixed on Giorgio, who had gone from preening contempt to stunned recognition in the space of a heartbeat. The smartphones recording the scene had multiplied, their owners forgetting their own snobbery in their eagerness to capture this moment. "Got pretty much the same reaction, too," Brad continued, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Guy took one look at my clothes and tried to show me the door. Funny thing is," he turned to examine the charcoal Armani suit that Marcus had been eyeing, "I was wearing something pretty similar to what this young man's got on right now." The boutique had fallen so silent you could hear the gentle hum of the air conditioning, every breath held in anticipation of what would happen next. Giorgio's perfectly maintained composure had begun to crack, small beads of sweat appearing on his forehead, despite the carefully controlled temperature. "Mr. Pitt," Giorgio stammered, his Italian accent thickening with nervous energy, "it's an honor to have you in Alessandro's. If there's anything I can do—" Brad held up a hand, the casual gesture somehow carrying more authority than Giorgio's finest power suit ever could. "You know what that guy told me back then?" Brad's voice remained conversational, but it carried to every corner of the now silent boutique. "He said I should try Walmart, said they had a great selection of clip-on ties." He chuckled, but the sound held no humor. "I remembered that moment when I was walking the red carpet at Cannes. Remembered it when I was getting fitted for Brioni suits for Ocean's 11. Funny how those moments stick with you, isn't it?" He turned to Marcus, really looking at him for the first time. "That envelope in your pocket, first big paycheck?" Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Goldman Sachs, right?" "Saw the card when you were reaching for it earlier. Not bad for a kid from—" Brad paused, studying Marcus's face with the same intensity he brought to his award-winning roles. "Detroit," Marcus managed, his voice barely a whisper. "Detroit," Brad repeated, nodding as if this confirmed something. "You know, the suit you're wearing right now?" He gestured to Marcus's thrift store blazer. "The shoulders are perfectly tailored. Someone took real care with that alteration, shows attention to detail, shows someone who understands that style isn't about the price tag. It's about how you wear it." The wealthy audience shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of their own designer labels and what they represented. Several lowered their phones, the act of recording now feeling somehow shameful. Brad's attention returned to Giorgio, who had begun to visibly wilt under the star's steady gaze. "You know what the real difference is between that guy who kicked me out and you, Giorgio?" He pronounced the name with perfect Italian inflection, somehow making it sound like both a compliment and an accusation. That guy was just doing his job, following orders from above. But you? He gestured around the boutique. This is your domain. These are your rules. The manager's face had gone from flushed to pale, the perfect Windsor knot of his tie suddenly looking like a noose. Behind them, someone's phone chimed with a notification. The first videos were already going viral, number Brad Pitt Justice, trending in real time. "I'll tell you what we're going to do," Brad continued, his voice carrying the same quiet authority that had commanded armies in Troy and rallied resistance fighters in Inglorious Bastards. "You're going to show this young man every Armani suit in his size. You're going to treat him with the same respect you'd show me. And then—" He smiled, that famous Brad Pitt grin that had graced 1,000 magazine covers. "Then I'm going to tell you about the time I walked into a Gucci store in Rome wearing sweatpants and what the manager there did differently." The tension in the room had transformed into something else entirely. Anticipation, yes, but also the dawning realization that they were witnessing not just a celebrity encounter, but a moment of genuine social change. The wealthy patrons who had been so eager to record Marcus's humiliation now looked uncomfortable in their designer clothes, as if suddenly aware of the ugliness beneath their beautiful labels. Giorgio's transformation was remarkable to watch, like seeing a peacock's feathers suddenly wilt in the rain. The precise, practiced movements he'd cultivated over 15 years of luxury retail had devolved into nervous energy. His hands fluttered between suit racks, pulling out Armani pieces with trembling fingers. The charcoal pinstripe is our newest arrival," he managed, holding up a suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Perhaps Mr. Pitt could offer his opinion on the cut? The desperate attempt to redirect attention only made Brad's smile widen. "You know what I think?" Brad said, taking the suit from Giorgio's hands with casual ease. "I think we should ask Marcus what he sees." He held the suit up to the light, then turned to the young man from Detroit. "What caught your eye about this one?" Marcus swallowed hard, but when he spoke, his voice carried the same quiet confidence that had won him his position at Goldman Sachs. "The shoulders," he said, reaching out to touch the fabric with reverent fingers. "See how they're structured, but not aggressive? It's powerful without trying too hard. And the pinstripes are subtle. You almost have to look twice to see them." Brad's eyes lit up with genuine appreciation. "You hear that, Giorgio? That's not someone looking to buy a label. That's someone who understands style." He turned to address the still recording audience. "How many of you chose your suits because of the brand name? And how many of you actually understand what makes a suit worth wearing?" The silence that followed Brad's question was deafening. The boutique's wealthy clientele shifted uncomfortably, their own designer suits suddenly feeling like costumes rather than clothing. A woman in Chanel who had been smirking earlier now studied her reflection in the mirror with newfound uncertainty. "Let me tell you about that manager in Rome," Brad continued, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "I walked in wearing sweats after a long flight, but instead of judging, he saw past the clothes. Know what he said?" He paused, making eye contact with several audience members through their phone cameras. He said, "True style isn't what you wear, it's how you carry yourself." Brad turned back to Marcus, who stood straighter under his attention. This young man saved for months, probably ate ramen for dinner just to buy one perfect suit. He didn't come here to show off wealth. He came here to invest in himself. And you know what I see? He gestured to Marcus's carefully tailored thrift store blazer. "I see someone who took what he could afford and made it look like $1 million. That's not money, that's style." Giorgio's face had transformed from embarrassment to genuine shame as the truth of Brad's words sank in. The manager looked at Marcus again, really looked at him this time, seeing not the shabby clothes, but the dignity with which they were worn. Around them, phones lowered one by one as the audience began to recognize their own reflection in this moment. "I'd like to apologize," Giorgio said suddenly, his voice cracking with genuine emotion. "Not just for today, but for every person I've judged without knowing their story." He turned to Marcus, squaring his shoulders as if preparing to carry a heavy weight. "Your eye for detail, your understanding of style, I should have seen it immediately. Instead, I saw only what I wanted to see." Brad nodded approvingly, but remained silent, letting the moment belong to Giorgio and Marcus. The manager moved to the register, his movements now humble rather than haughty. "The Armani you selected," he continued, "it shows exceptional taste. Would you allow me to help you find the perfect fit?" Marcus withdrew the envelope from his pocket, hands steady now where they had trembled before. But before he could speak, Brad stepped forward. "The suit's on me," he said, then quickly held up a hand as Marcus began to protest. "Not as charity, as an investment, in someone who already understands what too many people never learn, that true style isn't about the price tag on your clothes. It's about the way you respect yourself and others." The boutique erupted in spontaneous applause, not the polite kind reserved for social occasions, but the genuine appreciation of people who had witnessed something profound. Phones caught the moment Giorgio and Marcus shook hands, captured the respect in Brad's smile, recorded the exact second when an exclusive boutique became a place of transformation rather than transaction. The next hour transformed Alessandro's from a boutique into something resembling a master class in style and humanity. Brad stayed, watching with quiet satisfaction as Giorgio worked with Marcus, their shared enthusiasm for proper tailoring bridging the gulf that had seemed so vast earlier. The manager's expertise, once wielded as a weapon of exclusion, now flowed freely as he explained the subtle differences in fabric weights, the importance of proper shoulder construction, the way a well-cut suit could change not just appearances, but confidence. Other customers lingered, their phones mostly forgotten now, watching the genuine joy that came from matching the perfect suit to the person rather than the wallet. Several approached Marcus to admire his eye for detail, to ask his opinion on their own selections. The same women who had whispered behind manicured hands now engaged him in earnest conversation about the psychology of professional dress, hanging on his words as if he'd been a style expert all along. The videos spread across social media like wildfire. Chagger Style is more than money, and Brad Pitt Masterclass trending globally within hours. But unlike typical viral moments that flared and faded, this one sparked a genuine conversation. Luxury boutiques across Milan, then Paris, then worldwide, began sharing stories of their own transformative moments, of clients who had taught them to see beyond labels. Alessandro's itself changed. Giorgio, inspired by the experience, instituted a new training program for his staff focused on recognizing genuine style rather than just wealth. The charcoal Armani suit became their most requested item, with customers specifically asking to hear Marcus's perspective on its subtle details. Brad's words about investment in oneself became the boutique's unofficial motto, displayed discreetly near the fitting rooms. True style isn't what you wear, it's how you carry yourself. Marcus's story resonated particularly with young professionals who began sharing their own journeys of transformation through fashion, emphasizing dignity over designer labels and personal growth over price tags. 2 weeks later, Marcus walked into Goldman Sachs wearing his perfectly tailored Armani suit. But it wasn't the designer label that turned heads. It was the quiet confidence with which he wore it. The suit had become more than clothing. It was a reminder that true worth couldn't be measured in thread count or brand names. Brad's intervention had lasted less than an hour, but its ripples continued to spread. Giorgio had found his calling in mentoring young professionals about the art of genuine style, offering free consultations to recent graduates. The boutique's Instagram now featured a mix of high-end fashion and inspirational stories, each post emphasizing character over cost. As for that moment when a Hollywood star had championed his dignity, Marcus kept the viral video, not for the celebrity encounter, but for the lesson it taught. That style, like character, was built from the inside out. The suit hung in his closet like a milestone, but the real transformation wasn't in the Armani label. It was in the understanding that true elegance began with how you treated others, especially when you thought no one was watching.